business is Rolling Hills Maplewood Mobile Home Park Conditional Use Permit discussion and some clarification of restroom requirement. And
thank you. The memo from Mr. Ekstrand, the senior planner, speaks for itself. If you recall, the last time this was before the council, there was an issue regarding the restroom facilities at one of the storm shelters in the park. And I've had conversations with council for Rolling Hills, the new owners essentially, through their attorney, Mr. DeVink, who was here and briefly addressed you. They've agreed to essentially reinstall what they've taken out. He did tell me that the facilities that were there were not functioning for many years prior to even the new owners taking over. But that notwithstanding, the service was there, the lines were there, everything else, and due, I'm sure, in small part to the request of the residents, as well as the fact that they didn't have a problem replacing what was there, they've agreed to do that. So they will be replacing like with like, and because of the fact that they were non-functioning when they took over the park, it'll be replaced, or they will be replaced rather with new but substantially similar toilet and lav faucet is what I understand is there. So with that, I would turn it back over to you. That project should either be completed or substantially started even as we speak. I just got back from being on a week, but I did confirm with their attorney today on the phone, and he's actually now on vacation in Connecticut, but that's what he indicated to me. So I'd stand for questions, but I believe that was the directive of the council, so essentially we've taken care of that, and there will be facilities where before there were some.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alan, for working on that. I'm very glad to hear that they're doing that. I think Kathy and I both at the last meeting expressed how troubled we were when we heard that this was the response to our putting the requirement that the restrooms be maintained. But their initial argument, which was to say that now we no longer have that clause from the original CUP because we were replacing them with one unified CUP, and so we didn't have that thing that specifically called out installing the sanitary facilities. The concern that raised to me is there anything else there that we're taking for granted that was part of the CUP when it was being constructed that could come back and haunt us? And so
I would just add that anything they do with regard to changing or reconfiguring that manufactured home park, they would have to come through the city and amend the CUP. So we still have them that way. If they're going to deviate from this, then they are required to submit a new app.
We typically put things in conditional use permits that are not part of our codes and ordinances because we don't have to put in the codes and ordinances stuff because that applies to everybody. These are special circumstances. And I guess I would have some concern along the lines of what Mr. Nephew is thinking in a couple of his examples anyway. I mean, we say maintain the restrooms, and they interpret that as, well, the law says that we don't have to have them, so we're just going to rip them out. And so, you know, I think there are some concerns because I believe that the conditions that were put into this permit were put there to ensure that the park was a nice place to live.
In a normal situation, which this ceased to be when they took out the plumbing as I see it, I would think we wouldn't have to worry about assuming that the original conditions would be met. However, it was only under some kind of, oh my word, attorney coercion that common sense and decency took over. So I don't know how we handle that. It might be appropriate to put those things back in the CUP, and P.S. you might want to send a letter to those dudes saying why we are, because I'm astounded that it took that. And I don't want to be sitting here again in even 2 years, much less my people to follow me in this chair having to go, well, what the world? You know, I mean, really. I played it over so many times when it came to us last time, like, are you serious? You have nothing else to do but take out plumbing because you're going, nah, 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 like 7th grade playground? So
there are some people here, I know they want to speak, but I'm going to limit you. We're only going to allow you to speak about the conditional use permit items, and if there are things that are in here that were taken out that you feel should be put back in, we can't, you know, just randomly expand the conditional use permit. We have to have some basis to do things. And so I'm not interested in hearing about, in general, what's been going on in the park. That's none of the city's business. But if you have some comments on the CUP itself, I'll allow you to make them. Please, could you give your name and address for the record, please?
I'm Paul Ruby. I'm president of the Rolling Hills Resident Association. I live at 1334 Pearson Drive in Rolling Hills. We'll abide by what you asked before. I just have one thing I want to ask about. When we were here, we talked about all, A-L-L, all the restrooms. And that means the north and the south shelter, because the north shelter is where they were taken out a couple of years ago. But that's where we have handicapped people over there. And, you know, what do we do about handicapped people? I think they deserve to have toilets also. And everything is there, the plumbing is there. So we're just asking that we have it put in all restrooms. That's all we're really asking for.
Okay. Mr. Cantrud will make note of that along with the rest of the staff. Thank you.
That falls under the common sense decency clause.
Mayor and Council, for what it's worth, the plans that I saw only talked about facilities in one of those shelters.
Yeah, well.
Just for what it's worth.
And for what it's worth back, common sense and decency.
Okay.
The motion that I'd like to make is that that staff bring this back for revision to the CUP with the intent of reinforcing any of the original conditions of the CUP that might be erroneously thought to have been removed when we revised it. So we're not, the intent here is not to come up with any new conditions. It's just to make clear that those original conditions that the council put in place for the separate two CUPs are still in effect. So from my perspective, this is a clarification, not a revision, because as per Mr. Cantrud's conversation with them about the restroom, it was just them misunderstanding the intent, and so we want to have the language clarified, not particularly expanded or altered. Yes, and so the motion is to direct staff to work on that CUP and to call a public hearing for the revised and clarified CUP.
I'll second it.
Ms. Judeman?
Well, just for whatever it's worth, that was my understanding, and if that isn't what we intended, I would have to ask for reconsideration and take my vote back, because I'm not voting for something where we're getting into this kind of a muck. How stupid is that? So you might want to pass that on to that dude. I mean, really, we were trying to make sense, and we did not intend to take out anything that was decent in order for them to have the language they wanted. So if that's what they read, they're hard of hearing and a little dull.
Obviously, the Rolling Hills representatives aren't here, nor is their attorney. But I would like to say, on at least behalf of my conversations with the attorney for Rolling Hills, he's mentioned that the new owners are very committed to the park. They put in a playground and other things that they haven't been heralded for, if you will. And I really don't think there was any nefarious intent on behalf of the park owners by taking out the facilities. Sure. They were non-functioning when they took over, so this was not a game of gotcha. I mean, I can.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Nephew, which is seconded by Mr. Copeland. Is there any further discussion necessary? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's ayes all.